You're listening to the Bold Dreams Held Loosely podcast with me, Taryn Watts, and my dear friend and colleague, Michelle Theriault. At the Mind Rebel Academy, we're home to the revolutionary Mind Rebel method, a transformative approach to unlocking your inner wisdom and living in alignment, changing how people connect, serve, lead, and thrive in their lives. This podcast is where we celebrate the beauty of dreaming boldly, embracing big, inspiring visions for our lives, while holding them gently with curiosity, trust, and a heart open to the magic of the unexpected. So get cozy, settle in, and as always, take what resonates and gently leave the rest. Enjoy the conversation.
Taryn, do you want to start by describing the origins of the conversation we're about to have today?
Yeah. So I was just briefly chatting with an MRA alumna. She graduated a couple years ago, and she was just updating me on how she's doing, how things are going. Our sons are playing football together in the spring. And so we were just chatting about that. And she was asking about, where could she find the 10X podcast that we had done, because she needed to listen to it again. She's just inside a lot of things right now. And so we got to talking about that. And then I asked her, I said, if you could request Michelle and I to have any conversation on the podcast, what would it be? And I'm going to read what she wrote back because I think it's so beautiful. These are the things I've been sitting with. Courage versus fear. What's the fear telling me? What can I learn from it? How can I learn from it? Mindset is everything. Working on this a lot too lately. The power of the words we say to ourselves. And we've got one life. As the people around me age, die, and lose their memories, I know I need to live the shit out of mine. This is it. There's no dress rehearsal, no encore. So when she brought that forward, something inside me got really excited. I just can so, on a visceral level, mind, body, soul, relate to what she's talking about. Michelle, as we courageously walk our new path forward here, we've been met with all sorts of failures and challenges and things we're navigating and fears and limiting beliefs. And oh my gosh, it's just overwhelming. And so I'd love to sink our teeth into this topic. I'd love to talk about choosing courage over fear day over day over day. And also maybe even unpacking some of the fears that we've been wrestling out with, maybe even some of the failures that we've been wrestling with. Yeah, I just want to sink into that today.
I think the very last thing I said to you this morning before we switched gears to start prepping for, what we're going to talk about today, the very last thing I said to you was, we are so brave, aren't we? We are so brave, because what's really true and present for both of us right now is that there are a lot of fears, and moving forward in the direction that lights us up, that inspires us, that represents our values, our vision, our dreams. It's so scary. It's taking so much courage to walk the path right now.
As we're actually live recording this podcast, I'm in the midst of writing the MRA's origin story in 3 different chapters and 3 different parts. And it's been so healing for me to write and to look back on really the last 15 years and how the MRA came to be. And what I'm just struck by is when I tell the story and I look back to tell the story of these various chapters of the MRA's origin story, I am so struck by how beautiful the path unfolded, and almost magical the path unfolded, and the miracles that happened, the way that, when I listened to the whispers, the way the universe met me, the way the universe supported me, and just how this path has unfolded to get us to where we are today. It feels so beautiful. And yet the path from a bird's eye view and looking back, it's so beautiful. But the actual journey of one foot in front of the other on the path was absolutely terrifying. It was joyful, it was expansive, but it was terrifying. And for as many successes as I had along the path, I had probably about, 10 times the failures. And I think that doing a reflection, it's a powerful process. There was a quote. Can you repeat that quote you were telling me about?
There's a Steve Jobs quote that our MRA alumna friend shared with us, and I can't remember the exact quote, but the sentiment goes something like, when you're looking forward to where you want to go, you can't connect all of the dots of the hows or how the path is going to go and the meaning and the connections. You can't connect them looking forward. It's only when you're able to look back that you can see how the dots connect and why it all had to be that way and how all the little pieces fit. And I find that idea strangely reassuring because I feel like that's what I'm desperately trying to do. Is I'm sitting here where I am, looking forward, desperately trying to connect the dots. Like, how does it fit? What are the hows? And I'm unable to do it. And I find that reassuring to remember that that part comes after. I can see that in past heroes' journeys, I was able to look back and see how all the mistakes, all the failures, all the challenges, all of the moments, how it did end up all being perfect and connected. I don't know if this is going to mess with our flow, but before we were talking about that quote, what I really wanted to ask you was, when you say you have 10 times more failures than successes on the path, I'm curious now, looking back, what you consider to be those failures along the way.
Okay, let's think about that. So putting programs out there, no one wants it, thinking that, oh, this opportunity that just came to me, this amazing opportunity, and it just fizzles out and goes nowhere. Not even 10 times. I would say 1,000 times more of those little failure moments than, the big success or the big opportunity or the thing that comes into fruition, or the idea that's the idea, or the program that I put out into the world and it's it's the thing, or even the business. I can't tell you how many businesses I've created, that I walked down a path thinking it was the most aligned thing, and then no, it wasn't. And the universe kind of, and the disappointment that brings, and the shame that brings, and the embarrassment that brings, and the failure that evokes inside of you. So many times.
When you look back at that string of all those little failures along the way, which ones still grip you?
Oh my God, what a great question. I'm not sure I've ever thought of it. I need to scan my brain for that. I can honestly say that because I kept going, none of those failures, although I wanted to hide in a hole for a while, and I probably did, before I poked my head back up to the world and took my lessons and started creating again and moving forward again. I think none of those failures ultimately stopped me. I kept moving forward. I kept taking care of myself to be able to move forward. I kept nurturing my rebel mind, who was riddled with fear and with doubt. And really what all of those failures and what all of those challenges were doing, they were truly just mirroring back all of my limiting beliefs about not being enough, not being important, not having anything meaningful to say, no one cares, all sorts of limiting beliefs. Probably every single limiting belief on the face of the planet has been mirrored back to me in failures of some kind. Because those never stopped me from moving forward. I say that, and I also want to say in the same breath that I had to really take care of myself during those failures. I had to really sit with my rebel mind, sit with my fears, sit with the emotions coming up, because I'm not a naturally brave human. It's not natural for me. I have to work quite hard internally to be brave. I'm not the kind of person that can move forward in the face of fear anyway. I need to look at my fear, hear my fear, nurture my fear, feel my fear, understand my fear from every single angle until my fear is coming on board with me to move forward. That's my process. That's the only way I can move forward. I can't move forward any other way. So there was a lot of that. There has been a ton of that over the course of the last, decade and a half. I don't know. There's no regrets there. However, there's one little corner that still grips me a little bit. And I think it's because it's very much tied to my current growing edge, the current thing that I am really facing right now that is helping me to move forward courageously on this new path that I'm on. And it has to do with how others perceive me. So when you asked that question, I remember this one incident very early on in my entrepreneurial journey where I had an inspired idea to launch this program. It was like, yeah, this is a great idea. It wasn't one of those like, oh, this is what I want to do, like the deep, visceral kind of like, this is what I want to offer the world. But it was like, yeah, this is exciting. This is what I'm going to offer. I'm just going to throw this out there and see if it lands. And I presented it to a group of women. And even as the offer and what it was coming out of my mouth, I was kind of like, it was just like, okay, it's coming out. It was like, this is what I'm offering. Who wants to join? And I remember one of the women in the group saying that that was really distastefully done, trying to like sell this product the way you did. And I don't think she actually said it to me. She said it to someone else and it got back to my ears. And that was a long time ago. And that comment lodged inside of me like a freaking boulder. And it wouldn't budge for years. For years. The shame that that person projected onto me and I allowed it to lodge inside of me just gripped me for years. So much so, like every time I'm an entrepreneur, I have to sell. I want to do it in the most aligned way. But if I don't have something to offer the world and sell, there's no business. There has to be some kind of exchange that happens. So learning how to make offers, learning how to sell was like a really big journey for me. Sometimes, I didn't do it well, but that comment lodged so deeply inside of me that for years, every time I would go to write something or I'd have a new offer, or when the MRA started a cohort, and the next cohort that was coming up, or anytime, even when I would, be in groups of either clients or groups of students, I would see her face for years and I would see her face pointing her finger at me. I can still feel it. There's still like some remnants there, even though I've done a lot of like work to get her out of me and to get this energy out of me and to like cut that cord, So when I look back on it, I'm actually more upset that it took me so long. Like I'm actually more upset that that person, that comment, that energy took on a life of its own after that and really impacted me. I allowed that to consume my mind. We put all the hours together over the last several years that consumed my mind. We're talking like maybe a good couple weeks of my life where I was consumed by that. And I think the reason that when you ask that question, that's literally the image that came to the forefront now is because my current growing edge of choosing courage over fear, I think it's the last little remnants of whatever that energy was that I'm releasing and that I'm really once and for all overcoming. Because if I know that if I want to go to the places I want to go in my vision, I'm going to get hundreds of those, maybe even thousands of people pointing their finger at me because they don't like what I said, or I didn't say it properly, or I triggered them, or I don't like your perspective. I don't like your face. I don't like your voice, like all of it. And if I'm walking around the world, like shaming myself for the finger pointing, like it's going to keep me very, 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 very small. And I think that's the current edge I'm inside of right now.
What's the specific fear that this particular memory of a failure, what's the specific fear it points at that you're still wrestling with inside of you?
That I'm bad, that what I have to offer is bad, like fundamentally flawed and bad.
I'm assuming along the way with all of the other 1,000 failures that in the moment really stung and, flared up fear and doubt and shame. I'm sort of assuming that because they've all faded away and, they haven't stuck with you, I'm assuming that those fears that they kind of flared up in you, somehow you were able to face, work through, and release. How did you do that with those other fears?
The ones that aren't still charged or activated in me are not like coming to the surface. It's simply because I just fully processed them. And there's been thousands of micro failures and some huge failures, I think just the process of sitting with myself, the process of doing my name it, feel it, shift it, honoring my rebel mind fears, honoring myself, continuing to take one step in front of the other. All the principles we teach in the Mind Rebel methodology, like that's really what it is. This one just has some deeper roots. Like this one is stickier. It's just taken me a lot longer to get this one out of me than some of the others.
If the only difference between your current growing edge and current fears are just the size and the depth, but other than that, they are not dissimilar to all the other fears you faced and processed before. If that's true, if this is the same, just bigger and deeper, what's the path forward for you in this current growing edge?
If we think about how our minds work and how they operate and the way that we perceive the world, the way that we create lenses rather around how we see the world, and events that happen in our life and experiences that happen in our life, they become these little data points in our brain, in our mind. And then when we experience something that kind of feels the same, has the same, energy or feeling or texture or whatever, our minds, what they do is they're drawing on these past experiences, and it's actually creating a lens on how we're interpreting and experiencing this completely new event. When I think back to that event, I don't know why that one out of all of them sits in me the hardest. I'm not really sure. But what's interesting is that when I think about it, the lens that created over my eyes and how that's sometimes loudly, sometimes incredibly subtly, so subtly, if I wasn't so attuned to my emotions and what's happening in my body, I could miss it. How that lens has impacted the way that I see the world and I see my work in the world. Just to paint a picture and give you an example, when I'm teaching a class or facilitating a group session, it's particularly most powerful in groups. That lens is actually scanning the room for who's the least satisfied with me or who doesn't like what I'm saying the most. And I'm looking at the room, and then I find the person, because there's always going to be someone. I find the person. And now I become fixated on that person and what they're thinking about me or what they're projecting onto me or how they're interpreting my words. And rather than looking at the rest of the room or the rest of the group who's deeply resonating with everything I'm saying or everything I'm expressing or everything I'm sharing, I had been fixated on those one or two individuals in the space. What that would do, again, sometimes so subtly and sometimes incredibly loudly, but even in the subtle experiences, the judgments of others and the perceptions that other people had of me, that would influence the way I express, the way I write, the way the words come out of my mouth, their faces and the tapes and the stories that I would tell myself about, they must think I'm this. Now I'm trying to appease them. I'm trying to change their mind. I'm trying to prove that I'm good. I'm trying to prove whatever it might be, but I'm speaking to them in some kind of twisted way. That was much more pronounced earlier on. And it's slowly healed over the years for sure. And I'm at a point now where I've done a lot of work on myself through this process and a lot of meeting that fear and meeting myself. And every time the pang to express myself with their filter would come up, I'd like have to check in with myself and do some work to make sure that I'm like, expressing clearly. And now I'm feeling this, this edge of what's beyond this growing edge is a version of me that is completely released of even the last little tendrils of this energy, completely wildly liberated from the perceptions that others hold of me, completely and wildly liberated from the perceptions that others hold of me. That's the version of me who lives on the other side of this. Michelle, I don't even think I answered your question. I don't even remember your original question.
I don't remember my exact original question, but I think what I really wanted you to do was, if you look back and take what you know, like, how do you move forward in this direction? And I think you answered that more beautifully and precisely than I even asked the question. I feel like what you're really describing is a deep rewriting of your perspectives, like a deep ownership and choosing of your own lens and who you want to be, which is such a challenging thing to transform the patterns that your mind sees and looks for to confirm themselves. I keep being pulled back to this thought time and time again over this past week or so. We had a past alumna, Angela McKay, pull us a card for 2025 for the MRA and give us a reading. What does 2025 hold for us? And one thing she said in that reading was, I feel like, is talking about this idea of carving out these new paths for yourself. And I think sometimes that's an external thing. You start traveling new roads and new paths, but it always has the corresponding internal element of to choose new paths, to choose new perspectives, to choose new strategies. Some part of you has to change, and the old pathways in your mind that make you see lack or, make you think I'm not good enough and, look for that reflection or whatever they are, really like allowing those old grooves to smooth over and create new grooves that are empowering. It's so challenging. It's such work to do to build the new pathways. And one thing she said in the reading was that there's going to be the temptation or the opportunity to fall into old patterns if you let yourself. And so the work is to continue to step forward in these new pathways, even though they aren't completely well worn yet. They're not the habit yet. You have to intentionally continue to create the new pathway. And some of the ways she shared that was in a different context of what we're talking about now. But I feel the connection here with this and, just the way you are describing becoming this new person who this old fear doesn't grip in the same way. To me, that's the essence of transformation. Like all the transformation we ever talk about or really hope for ourselves, that's the essence of it. And it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. You said something earlier that I kind of want to circle back on. You were talking about how the things inside of us, the limiting beliefs we're shedding, the old ways of being that we're shedding, the path we walk to do those things. When we've really shed a limiting belief or really shifted an old paradigm or shifted into a new perspective, I find there's like this pattern that happens within each of those. And I know when I've really shed something and really stepped into a new way of being, when there's no energetic charge left. When you asked me the question, like I couldn't even remember. Like some of those failures really stung. Like they hurt. I can't even remember them because whatever work I did on myself, the energetic charge has been completely neutralized, cycle completed, that they're just kind of gone, like just like poof, gone, Whereas the one I'm inside right now, I can feel it. Even as I'm talking about it, my solar plexus is on fire a little bit. And what I notice is that there's like this emotional process that happens within a healing process. And for this one, what I'm noticing, and I think everyone might be different, but what I'm noticing for this one is that I've been angry at this one. There was some anger here. There was fire in this one. there was the original shame and like shrinking and, oh my gosh, being so careful with my words and like, oh, did I offend this person over here? And was my perspective shared fully over here? Did that person misperceive me? And oh gosh, like that was so exhausting. That energy turned into, over the years, it turned into more of like an anger, anger at the people, like anger first at the others. Like how dare you point your finger at me? Like, how dare you? You know, and that anger, I was like, how do I express this anger healthy? I'm just like, I block you on social media. I just like, get out of my life, get out of my circle, get out of my energy field, like this anger that needed to come to the surface. This anger was never expressed, by the way, in like verbal words to these people because it wasn't appropriate. And that's just not what the situation called for. And then it kind of turned into like a little bit of anger towards myself. Like, how did I let that consume me for so long? And I think that every single emotion in the process has been needed. I needed to feel all of these emotions. I can feel the end of a cycle. I can feel it. I can feel the end of a cycle. It's not quite there yet, but it's nearing completion. So this energy, for a good couple years, I stopped writing. And I love writing. I love writing. It is the most healing thing to my entire soul. There's no other outlet of expression that I like more than writing. And I used to write all the time. I used to have the energy for it. It used to be just like so healing to write. And I stopped writing for two reasons. One, my workload was just so full that I just didn't have the space to write and the space to access what wants to be said in me. But the other reason was because of this energy. Like, I didn't have enough energy to work on these fears and courageously move forward and write anyway and express the way I want to express. Because what was clouding my ability to express myself, my ability to create in the form of writing was how other people are going to perceive it. Or am I bad for feeling this way? Is someone going to like cancel me? Like that was a big one, right? Like there was a couple of years where cancel culture was just exploding. And that just had me go, oh, it is so not safe to express now, because now I'm seeing all the, that woman who pointed her finger at me, I'm seeing them everywhere. There's like thousands of them canceling people everywhere. I don't want to put myself out there like that. Oh my gosh, it just almost like flared that up. And for the last little while, I felt this desire to write again. I wanted to express again. I wanted to write again. And that was really feeling like the path forward was just to write again. So I started in little ways. I started writing the nurture sequences in our emails, but I decided that I really wanted to write these origin stories and I wanted to share them. I wanted to share them with our mailing list who hadn't heard from me in years. I wanted to share them on the outlets of social media and I just wanted to express again. It took me about a week to write the first chapter. It took me much less to write the second chapter, but the first chapter took me about a week because I just needed to find my flow again, needed to find my expression again. And then I wrote it and it was like, oh, this is what I want to put out into the world. This is coming from my heart. This is coming from my soul. And I'm going to put it out there because it feels so good. And I put it out there and I got beautiful messages back, some beautiful validation back. But then a couple days later, I happened to be in our mailing list platform, whatever you call that. And I don't usually check these things because I don't like to check these things. I don't look at open rates. Those metrics don't matter to me. I find them also very triggering. I just don't like them. I try really hard to stay away from them because I don't want them to influence how I write or what do I express. I don't want that. I really want it to come from a place inside of me. And I had to go into our mailing list thing to do something else. But right on the dashboard, it shows the subscriber rate. And it showed that on January 10th, there was a massive dip in our subscribers. And I was like, oh, that's weird. What happened on January 10th? And I'm like, oh, I just expressed a little piece of my soul and all these people unsubscribed. That hurts. It would have been easy to shell back up in my little hole and not want to share myself and not want to express. But instead, I'm actively choosing a new path forward. I'm actively choosing courage. I'm actively choosing to believe that, I'm not for those dozens or however many subscribers that unsubscribed. I'm not for those people. And that is liberating. That is incredibly liberating to know that I'm not for everyone. There could be people listening to this podcast right now that are so annoyed with me and so repelled by me. And I don't know why you're listening if that's the case, but that's not mine. It's not mine to hold. That's where I am right now. And I hope in a couple months from now, it's almost like I barely remember this feeling because it's just so gone.
As you're describing the place you're coming to now and the perspectives that you're choosing, and like, as you're speaking now, I can see that the process of becoming this new version, it's like well on its way. You can access these new perspectives, you can choose them, you can stand in them. And it's already, I can see the beautiful journey of, oh, how this failures and pains needed to happen so you could transform and be this version of you. I'm not trying to make you say a cliche thing of the failures were needed and I love them. I'm not trying to like prompt you to say that.
No, I hate them.
I know.
I hate them.
But where do you think you would be without these failures?
Oh, I see these failures as either things I need to heal inside of myself and grow from inside of myself and evolve from inside of myself. It's either that or it's a redirection from the universe. I can't even imagine if I didn't have failures. There would be no growth and I would have it all my way, which is so truly limited compared to the plan that the universe has for us. The failures have been absolutely necessary for me to become the version of myself that I am today. And oh my gosh, I really love myself. Like, I really love the version of myself that I am today. Deeply, 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 deeply. I adore this version of myself. I wouldn't be this version of myself without the failures. The other thing is that this is something we're experiencing a little bit right now, is that oftentimes the failures that come into our life are these redirects. Our minds can get very fixated on how it ought to be, how it should be. We might have a vision for our life. We might be manifesting the vision into our life. But our minds really, 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 really want to know how we're going to get there. I'll speak for myself. My mind can allow my heart and soul to vision the most beautiful, breathtaking vision for my life. It can allow all the parts of me to do that. But it very quickly defaults into, okay, I see this big vision. And now we need to plot the path and map all the steps out to get there. Because I'll speak for myself. My mind feels safe inside of the plan, the logic, the hows. And so I can very easily default into, well, this is how we're going to do this thing. And it's going to bring in this much income, or this is going to be incredibly successful over here, or this, whatever it is. My mind can very easily map out the plan in also very sneaky ways. And so what I've experienced is that when the plan doesn't unfold the way I thought it should, it's because there's a different route. There's a different path. And I was fixating on this one path, this one how. And I have to constantly remind myself that the hows are none of my business. It's not up to me to determine the hows. Yes, there's forward action. Yes, we have to take one next best step in front of the other. But when I met with failure, I'm looking for two things. I'm looking at what is here for me to grow from, and where is life redirecting me? What am I missing? Because oftentimes when I met with failure and I'm really disappointed by it, there's like shame in it. There's hurt in it. It's because my mind put so much pressure on this thing to work out or to be successful or to whatever. And in those moments, I've just completely narrowed the path to get there. When I found that life is like, no. There's this path over here that we want you to walk down. I mean, this is the definition of having a bold dream and holding it loosely. And it's not easy to do. It's really, really hard to do. We eat, sleep, and breathe this work literally all day long. When we sleep, Our minds are chewing on it all night long. And still, I miss it. Still, I get fixated on the hows. Still, my mind tricks me into thinking this is the way and it's part of the vision. And it's only through failure. When I look back, thank goodness I didn't get my way every time I wanted it to work out in a particular way. Thank goodness. The MRA wouldn't be here if that was the case, because this wasn't part of the vision, like life has a vision for us. When we create these visions from our souls, like the true yearnings of our heart, and we define it, there is a path to get there, but it's not the path that's going to be carved out by our logical minds. That's the old paradigm of thinking. We need to enter into new paradigms of thinking. And honestly, we've never traveled the path from where we are today to where we want to be. We've never traveled that path. So our minds don't have a map for it. And so if we want to open up new pathways, new paradigms, we've got to trust that there is an intelligence far greater than us that knows the way forward. And our job is really to stay open to where life is pulling us, like where life is guiding us. And just this morning when I was journaling, because I had realized this week that I was so trapped in the hows, like so gripped in fear. Like if this thing doesn't work, I don't know if there's going to be a business tomorrow. It was so gripping. Like if this thing fails, the world will end, my little world, And I realized how gripped I was to the house, how gripped I had been. And so over the last week, I've been really trying to actively, like one finger by one finger, trying to release that death grip. And just this morning, I was journaling and I said to the universe, show me the whispers. I've clearly missed it. I've clearly gotten so caught up in all these hows that I've shut my senses off to the whispers of where life wants to guide me. And there's something so beautiful inside that perspective of like, oh, I don't have to figure it all out. My job is to lean back and actually just stay open to where life is pulling us.
It's so obvious to me based on both this conversation and looking back on my past failures that have all led to something wonderful in the end. It's so obvious in this moment from a detached place how powerful and rich these little failures can be to both illuminate something that's wanting to heal or transform inside, but also to refine and like redirect the path for you. And yet I still so viscerally, instinctually, reflexively resist failure, am irrationally terrified by experiencing it in the moment. And I don't think I'm alone. I think there are many people who have this response to failure, like avoid it at all costs, avoid the pain of it. It's going to mean something horrible. It's terrifying. I really wonder why that is. If this process of experiencing trials and failures to help you grow and lead you the right direction, if it's so obviously rich and good and important, why am I so scared of it? Why do I think it means something so bad? Where do you think that comes from?
I think for me, there are different levels of the fear of failure. When something carries a lot of weight and has what I perceive to be enormous consequences to my failure, it's like a fear of survival. It's like a rebel mind, fear of survival. Something bad is about to happen. I will not be able to feed my kids next week. We will be out on the streets, like fear of survival, some of them. But I would say, if I'm being very honest with myself, and again, this could be just a me thing, but then there are smaller fears of failure, like I put out this email, but no one likes it or responds to it, or I put out this new offer, but like no one signs up for it, or that's coming more from a place of my ego. Oh, that hurts. Ouch. Oh, that's embarrassing. Oh, that's shameful. And oh, no one wants their egos to be bruised or to I think that I've experienced both, and both hurt in very different ways. Michelle, I'm not even sure if I answered your question. That's just what came up for me.
Your answer makes me ask myself, why does my rebel mind, why does she find it so threatening to fail? Because there's the side of things for me too, that it's also true for me. There are certain failures that make me feel like the results could be bad. I don't want significant, lasting bad consequences in my life. And it makes sense why failing in those realms would be scary. But the same is also true for me. If I think about all of the different types of failures that have probably consumed more of my time and emotions, they've been little failures that would trigger a piece of my ego, my rebel mind, my guard, wanting to really protect against being seen a certain way or seeing myself a certain way. And that's so interesting. And I just wonder, why do those things have such a grip on me? You know, and not just me, for everyone, but just from this perspective, sitting back and looking at what an illusion that is. It's so interesting that it has such a grip. I think back to, I don't know what age this started, somewhere in elementary school this started, but it really took hold in junior high. I think about the idea of failing on a test or a project, but not even failing. Like, I remember the gripping fear in my stomach of not excelling or getting a near perfect mark. I remember the feeling of looking at a mark that was under a 95 on a test in something that I thought I should be really good at. And I remember the feeling you were talking about in your stomach, the fiery, burning, emotional rumbling in your solar plexus. I remember feeling that inside the classroom so many times. In grade 7 or 8, I'm a child. There are no consequences. I'm excelling. The teachers are happy. My parents are happy. But this silly little thing, some part of me decided I needed to succeed at. And if I don't, it's a failure. There was no real life consequences. I made it all up in my mind. It was imaginary. It was all imaginary. And it gripped me like the worst of failures. It's so fascinating, the power of our minds, which I'm sure it's just trying to protect me from some perceived danger. But it's amazing how fake that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perception is reality, right? And our rebel minds have a perception of reality. And our rebel minds are operating from these core belief systems that when we are perceiving something from a rebel mind, or when some outside circumstance triggers the perception of our rebel mind, that's what we see. It's what we believe. It's what we feel. And it is so powerful. It's so powerful. It's also so individual. Even though like limiting beliefs can be universal and shared, it's also incredibly individual. Like, I'm listening to you talk about test results and I'm laughing at myself because, oh my God, I could not have cared less about test results in school. I failed so many university courses. It's like shocking I graduated. It's shocking. It's not because I'm not smart. I'm very, very smart. I just didn't apply myself. I just didn't care, to be perfectly honest. I didn't care about my marks. I didn't care about any of that. And likewise, this situation that's gripped me, one of the perspectives I love of yours is you have this, seems like you didn't even work for it. It's just natural inside of you. You don't give a shit what people think about you. You really don't. You have this incredible perspective of other people's opinions that I want to drink up. I want more of what you innately have to heal my own perception of my rebel mind.
You know what? I don't think that was innate. I think at one point, the reason it seems innate and effortless and natural to me now is because at one point, a long time ago, that was the deepest, stickiest, most painful, most fear-inducing thing, is how will others see me? How do I have to be right in their eyes? How do I have to be good in their eyes? What do I have to do to make them happy? To make them look at me and think I'm doing a good thing, being a good thing. That was the deepest, most tender, painful, fearful thing ever. I think it's the biggest thorn in your side, your Achilles heel, when you actually finally heal it, transform it, get redirected by it. Once you really move through it, it feels effortless. It doesn't stay a growing edge forever. And now it's so easy to see. Now I'm immune to it. I think I've shared this on a much earlier podcast, but I remember being, I don't know how old. I think I was in grade 2. This one moment, I remember being on the playground with a group of kids and we were playing and people were asking, what's your favorite food? And instead of going inward and thinking, what do I like to eat the best? My mind went, what's the cool thing to say? What's the right answer? What do I tell them my favorite food is so that I'll be accepted? Isn't that crazy? Oh my God, my little brain. It's crazy. And similar thoughts lasted. I remember when I realized people around me had musical preferences. Up until that point of my life, I listened to Enya, or what was playing on the radio while my parents were driving in the car, or Raffi records my parents had that played Baby Beluga, or like those kid songs. That was my musical world, but mostly Enya. I listened to Enya every single night upon falling asleep. She was genuinely my favorite, and she genuinely still is. That's my favorite. And I remember people at school talking about these songs that they were hearing, and they were started talking about this thing called much music. And I was like, what is this? I don't know. And I felt like this very uncool person. And in these really insignificant areas, I was so desperate to try to catch up, to make people think I was acceptable or cool or like them. And those are just like 2 really sadly pathetic little examples, but the fear of someone else looking at me and thinking of me as anything undesirable in any way, it felt like maybe I would die from it. I think I was very, very susceptible. It's partly true that we're very relational and we live in this web of friends and families and connections, and we're all connected, and our social networks can give us support or we can have a lack of support. And I think there's something true in there that we can sense. Other people do matter in our lives in a certain way. And I think I could partly sense the truth of that, but it felt like a part of my brain inflated it to this ridiculous degree where I thought I really could lose everything if people don't like me. That gripped me for a long time, a really long time. I think about all of the efforts I had to fit in with friends or make boys like me or be a part of a social group that I wanted to be a part of. Oh, it's so sad looking back now, but I don't know how. I can't even remember the pivotal moments right now, but somehow that all fell away. Yeah, now I feel completely immune to its pull. And not only immune to its pull, but when you told me, oh my gosh, we lost however many subscribers, instead of inside thinking, oh, it's okay, we'll be okay, it's not that big of a deal, I genuinely had a little bit of excitement because I really, really believe that as you become more you and you express more authentically, there will both be those people who are even more drawn in and resonate with you and match your vibration, and you will find your genuinely like-minded people. At the same time as that happens, very naturally, you absolutely will start repelling and releasing people. I don't think one can happen without the other. So even seeing that side of things, oh, these people decide they don't like us anymore. These people decide they don't resonate with your words. I very genuinely feel, ooh, this is good, because it means the opposite will happen too.
Okay, there's one more little corner of failure that I want to talk about before we wrap up our conversation. And that is that I really believe that every failure helps to refine our true vision. I think that having a vision for your life is so important. I think without a clear vision of where it is you want to go, I think not only is it important, but it makes life really fun. It really does. I really believe in the importance of a vision and refining the vision, honing in on the vision, touching the vision. to access the vision that is most honest and true and aligned for you. Because a lot of times we can vision from a place of old ideas, old perspectives, limited perspectives of what's possible. We could vision from a place of our guard, our rebel mind. Like, vision's a living, breathing entity, and every single failure I've ever had has helped me hone and refine the vision. So maybe it's actually taught me that thing I thought I wanted, it's actually not truly what I want. I thought it's what I wanted, or maybe I thought it was a stepping stone to what I wanted. Maybe it makes me realize something that I didn't see before. Like, every failure has helped me to also understand what it is I don't want anymore. And that's helped to refine my focus of the vision. So that's like incredibly important information. Really deep wisdom lives inside of every single one of our failures as to what it is we want and what it is we want to create for our lives.
I know how true that is. I've experienced how true that is. And I can still feel that there's this part of me, it's probably part of my guard, that thinks, I just want to get good enough, though, to figure it out without mistakes. Maybe if I try even harder, if I spend even more time in my journal, if I spend even more time with my emotions, if I vision even more devotedly, I'll get it right sooner. I'll get it right from the get-go. There's a part of my guard that really still wants to avoid the process of the failures, refining and honing my vision. This conversation is really inviting me to figure out a way to embrace that more. Why wouldn't I embrace that process? I love getting clearer and clearer on my vision. I think it would be really helpful for me personally to learn how to be even less afraid of failure. Embrace it, embrace failure more. There's some types of failure I'm probably great at embracing, and there's some types of failure that just terrify me, and they're different from what yours are. But gosh, that is a bit of a superpower, isn't it? If you're someone who can embrace the scariest of failures along your path, take them as information, take them as mirrors, take them as new data points and refinement and direction. Gosh, it's a superpower.
Yeah.
There's a little piece of a quote that our alumna friend sent us in relation to this topic. And the bottom of the quote says, "Go do some main character shit before it's too late." And there's something about that I love so much. Something about that perspective or that image really calls to me, really inspires a part of me to step forward. I think I really like thinking of myself sometimes as the main character in a story. I find it very helpful. It's sort of what the hero's journey invites you to do. Think of yourself as this hero, as the heroine of your story, of your adventure. But I also even just like thinking about it in terms of the main character in a movie. The main character always faces adversity in some way. The main character always has to choose something courageous. The reason you're rooting for them is so often because they've stepped onto some unconventional path for themselves. And probably most of the times I love or resonate with a main character in a movie or a book is because they're doing everything we're talking about. They're believing in a dream when all of the other sub-characters around them are telling them it's not possible. And they're following their own compass, their own internal compass. They're being brave, they're being courageous, they're walking through doubts, they're putting it all on the line. Maybe that's why we sometimes get obsessed with different actors and actresses, because we see them in these roles and we think, oh, I want to be like that character. And it just makes me think, I would love to be that in my life. I would love to look back on my life when I'm at the end of it and see myself as a main character equal to a main character in a movie or a book. What a thing I would be so proud of, I think, at the end of my life. And we've talked about this before. One of my favorite quotes is the Mary Oliver quote, and tell me, what is it you will do with your one wild and precious life? It's very similar, I think, to the energy of, go do main character shit. Oh gosh, I think it's so important. And I find it so helpful to be called back into that perspective of what do I want the big picture to look like? And when I keep that big picture in mind and I keep the entire story of my life in mind, I think that can help fuel me through these smaller, scarier steps and failures.
I think what you just shared is the reason why writing the Emery's origin story and really writing these chapters of my life over the last 15 years and the journey that I've taken to get here, it's really why it was so powerful and meaningful to me. It was really for me. That could be a really powerful exercise for people to put themselves as the main character of their story and write about their life and write about the journey that has gotten them to where they are today. That's such a beautiful way to connect the past dots and to strengthen your belief that, well, I got here. The path will continue to unfold step by step by step as I look forward towards that next vision for my life.
I know that there's so much of walking the path forward on any journey that you can't know every single little step. You can't know every single little how. Like you said, it's really only in hindsight that you can connect the dots and see the perfection of, all the little twists and turns. And I know that trying too desperately to figure those things out is such an unhealthy place for my mind to be. And I'm remembering an exercise that you led me and a group through a long, long time ago as a part of a visioning night, where you invited us to tap into a future version of ourselves, I think like a year from that moment, in order to have our future selves send some wisdom back, not necessarily to give us the exact answers, but to give some, wisdom, guidance, something to help us with our navigation and staying on the true path. I'm wondering if you could maybe remind me of what that was and how it might apply here in relation to, especially navigating this time where it's the path and trials of failures. There's mistakes, there's failures, there's bumps in the road.
So we had everyone vision for their year because it was like a new year visioning session and where they would be in 1 year from now. And that's the vision board that you created. And then the exercise was to look at the vision, place yourself inside the vision as if it were happening today. You are landed, you are arrived. The elements of your vision that you've placed on this board have arrived. Think more about how does it feel? How do you feel? First step was to create the vision. Second step was to put yourself in the vision, energetically put yourself there. And then the next step was to reflect on the road you had to walk to get here and reflect on the challenges, the roadblocks, the failures, the detours, the successes, the joys, all of the things that have led you here. But here you are in a state of arrival. Write yourself, your younger self, a letter with the wisdom that you hold today, already having traversed that path. And that was the exercise. And the letters that came out of that exercise were so beautiful. They were so powerful. And they were letters of keep going. They were letters of resilience. They were letters of it won't make sense to you most days, but I promise you it will be worth it, or I promise you this too shall pass, or whatever it is. It's like words of wisdom coming right from their souls, coming right from the versions of themselves that have arrived, guiding them on the path to come. That's a great exercise.
I remember before I started writing, not only just thinking, I don't have any wisdom to give myself, it was almost like I knew I was like, I don't know how this is going to be useless. I don't have wisdom. And then some magic started happening as soon as I just chose to do it anyway. And my hand started writing and my pen started writing. Something from my future self flowed through time, through my hand, through my pen. And my letter was so beautiful. And I knew it was beautiful as soon as I wrote it. I knew it was powerful as soon as I wrote it. I could feel, oh my gosh, there's something here. But even still, there was a little part of me that doubted, like, maybe this is just wishful. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't channel my future self. Maybe I just told myself what I wanted to hear. But what's so cool is that was years ago. Maybe that was it like 2019? Maybe
even earlier.
2018, 2017.
Maybe around that time.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And so years have gone by and I can see that the wisdom that came through was real. It was true. It wasn't wishful thinking. The guidance I was giving myself, it held true. It worked out. I almost want to go grab my letter and read it.
Do you have it?
I think I do. Can I if it takes me 2 seconds? Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay, I found it. You want to know what is kind of perfect? I didn't remember the title of what it was, but you titled this Hindsight is 2020.
Oh, because it was going into 2020. That's right. Yes. Okay. I remember now.
Actually, no, it was 2019, but hindsight is 2020, but it was from 2019.
You were imagining yourself in 2020, right?
Yeah, you're standing at the end of 2019.
Okay.
So the instructions were insert yourself inside your vision as you are standing at the end of 2019 was the time. You are 1 year older and wiser. You have stepped fully into this vision and you have lived your life full out this year. Each and every day of 2019, you were a yes to you, to your vision, to your passions, to your fullest potential. You have a message of encouragement for your younger self at the beginning of this year. What do you want her to know? Okay, I have not read this in a long time. Okay, dear Michelle, beautiful girl, you are doing it. You have been so incredibly brave and I'm so proud of you. Oh, I'm going to cry. Okay. Of course you will make it. Of course you'll succeed. Of course you'll find love. Of course love will find you. You're more incredible, beautiful, and magical than you know. Even when you doubt yourself, you're still on the right path. Even when you feel lost, you're still going the right way. Be easy on yourself. Let yourself enjoy the simple pleasures. Let yourself lean on your friends. Let yourself feel love. Let yourself feel pain. Let yourself feel hope. You're almost there. You're almost home. Of course you know the way. You have more help and support along the way than you realize. You are surrounded by so much love. One foot in front of the other. You are a brave warrior princess. You are a goddess. You are filled with magic. Let yourself light up. You are there. You are always already there. You are perfect as you are. That's what I wrote to myself. Oh my gosh. All of it is true. And in terms of that journey, I arrived and everything there was true. It did not lead me the wrong way.
Hindsight is 2020.
Hindsight is 2020. When I think about that, the struggles and the trials and the failures that we're inside of right now are such a different flavor than where I was then. But I think back to all of the failures on the path to love and healthy relationship. Oh my goodness. The mistakes I had to make. Oh my goodness. There were so many. And there were so many that, not that they almost broke me. That's not true, because I don't think I really was ever going to stop. But there were so many that hurt so bad in the moment. Oh my gosh, they hurt so bad and reflected so many limiting beliefs. But other than like a mild cringe here or there now, I'm like, ooh. Other than a mild cringe, it's pretty amazing that all of that struggle really fades so far into the background. None of it hurts. I cringe at myself, but none of it hurts anymore at all. I guess, God, I'm going to say another cliche, and I hate cliches, but I wouldn't trade any of it now. I wouldn't trade any of those pains because I wouldn't want to end up anywhere different than where I am now. And like you said earlier, like I love who I am in that realm now. Yeah.
Well, this conversation has helped to anchor some new perspectives of failure. I didn't even really know this was the conversation I needed to have, but it really was. And I really hope it did for others listening too. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. We invite you to experience the Mind Rebel method for yourself and join our community as our gift to you. Visit themindrebel.com/experience the method to begin your journey today.